Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of NODventures. My name is Varun superjonny John. I'll be your host for the evening. And today we are going to be talking about a really interesting topic that I think most of you want to hear about. It's going to be about careers in esports. And on the panel, I have three of the most talented people I've ever met in my life who are going to be joining me on this. So, hello, guys. A very warm welcome to you guys, and thank you so much for being here. How are you guys doing?
Hi. I guess I'll go first. Hi, Warren. Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited. And my name is Apollonia, for those who don't know. I'm a content creator for global esports, and I've dabbled in a few other things that are all esports related. Yeah.
imPERium?
So I'm imPERium. I'm a caster as well as streamer and some form of content creator. And thank you very much for having me on. I'm really excited to speak about this topic because it's a topic that I've thought about a lot in the past.
Yeah, and Sid.
So, hi, I'm Sid. I'm the manager for TSM Entity PUBG Mobile Squad. And again, excited to be here and speak about this topic because I've been receiving a lot of questions about it. So, I hope this helps somebody who's planning to get into the industry.
I'm sure almost all of us get approached with these with questions on this topic. And before we carry on forward, I'll give an introduction about all three of our guests once again. So I'll start with Apollina. She is a shoutcaster for League of Legends in the South Asian scene. She's a content creator for global esports as well. Used to be a competitive gamer herself and a coach. And imPERium, he is a PUBG mobile shoutcaster now, although he does do other games as well, and is signed with Code Red, one of the biggest talent management organizations in the world. And last but not the least, it's going to be Sid Joshi, as you all know, the manager for TSM Entity, and someone who is hell-bent on putting the Indian esports scene on the international map, as he says. So let's right off the bat, what sort of careers do you look at when someone is trying to get into esports? Apollina, I'll start with you first.
Mm, okay. Looking for a career in esports comes in many different forms. There are a lot of different opportunities in esports. Like usually the first one we think about is being a competitive player and competing to be the best, playing with the team, or if it's a solo game, just being at the top. But behind all of that, there's also, people working behind the scenes. And usually there are your people that do organizing for events. There's also coaching, team management. You even can go into game development. It's still part of esports. And then there's content creating as well. And there's a whole bunch of things. Yeah.
Okay, so Sid, this one's going to be for you since you have been part of organizations, you have been managing players as well. How do you think about the prospects of esports careers?
So I divide the career opportunities in esports into three major categories. The first one being, strictly to the team and the organizations where you have the managers, the coaches, the analysts, the support staff. The second one would be like the more creative side, where you have the designers, the videographers, graphic editors, all of those things. And the third one is more on the event side, production team, admins, casters, host desk, analysts. I mean, there's just so much to do. When people think about careers in esports, they usually start off with a coach or a manager or a player, but there's just so much. So I that's what I do. I divide it into three major parts, and I think those are all the opportunities you have in esports.
And imPERium. So, along with the professional players, the talent, the casters, the people on the desk are few of the people that appear on camera and are available for basically the general audience to view. So, can you briefly explain what a career in talent looks like as well?
A career in talent is all about the grind, right? It's all about, in my eyes, about getting into what you want to do, finding that area that you are passionate about within esports, and getting into the grind of it. realistically. From a career prospect, when it comes to talent like casters or anywhere in esports, it is about showing that you want to be in that space, because esports is such a growing area all across the world that there is also a lot of people vying for the same roles and the same areas to work in. But there are also a lot of hidden career areas that people can go into. When you look at like marketing and social media marketing is a huge aspect of esports that has come to fruition over the last 3 to 4 years, where we're having orgs, they will have a dedicated team for social media posts, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, that will help build up their brand. Because when you're talking about numbers and engagement numbers, that can really help bring on more sponsors and to help obviously develop that organization.
Yeah, that was sort of an interesting input. Following that up, I think we were having a conversation about this earlier before we started recording, and Apollonia, what she said about this, I want to hear that again. So, where to start the search for working in esports? How do you start that?
I think everyone has a very different and detailed experience of how they got into esports. And for me, it's actually been quite a journey. So about 6 years ago, when I was about 20 years old, I found League of Legends, and I absolutely loved that game. And I had no clue how I could further my passion in it, because I like esports. I like everything around gaming. So what I did was I looked for a team, and I found an all-female team. So it started from there. I joined the all-female team, and then I managed to kind of network my way. Oh, networking is so important. So when you meet a lot of different people, they can bring different opportunities based on the different strengths that you have. So it started out with training as a competitive player, and there was a small but growing female competitive scene in Singapore. So I started with that, played competitively with for many matches, and a lot of brands started to see this, and they wanted show matches or even event launches with these female teams. So that's how I got into it. I got to know brands, and then I started working with them, and it led me into studying League of Legends so much. And then I became a coached the team, and we got second. So that was great. It was a great achievement, trying all these things. And slowly I went into shoutcasting. So now I'm just shoutcasting a lot for the South Asian scene here. And it's kind of like a journey. It's like I did a lot of different things, but it's gaining that experience. And then you look for opportunities using this experience. You put it in your portfolio. You tell people, hey, I've done this. Don't be afraid to try new things. Because I don't think getting into esports is a straight road. There's a lot of different curves, a lot of different ways to start. I think both imPERium and Sid, they have a very different way of how they got into esports as well.
imPERium.
Yeah, like for me, it was a little bit similar to you, in fairness, Apollonia. I got into gaming. I was into a game called Vainglory, and that I started playing it at the end of 2015, and I found I loved the game, and I wanted to get into community more. So I got involved in the community, and when I became more involved in the community, I learned to love the game more and learn about esports and gaming in general, because at the time I had a big esports scene. And I didn't go into it thinking I wanted to be a caster. I didn't go into it thinking I wanted to be in esports, but by small bit of chance, there's a community tournament going on and they needed a caster, and I said, hey, I know about this game a bit. I think I like talking. Let's give it a go. And I found I loved it, and it was exhilarating, and that started off my passion. And from there, like you said, I marketed myself. When I realized that I wanted to do casting, whether it was full-time or not, I started doing as much as possible. I started talking to people. I started marketing myself in a way where people would notice me. Maybe if I didn't deserve the opportunity, they noticed me because I was outgoing and I talked to them. And it always goes down so many different paths. It's not straightforward, like you said. In terms of, I branched in towards streaming as well, which is something I didn't think I would do. I've branched off into other areas as I've gotten more into esports. But at the end of the day, it's about doing it for the love of esports and for the love of gaming.
Cool.
I would like to hear your take on this as well, since like you are the person that I've seen in the Indian esports industry for the longest time. I mean, as a kid, I used to follow Entity Gaming a lot, and you have been with them for a really long time and been in the Indian esports scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, you just made me feel old when you said as a kid. That's okay. So, as Apo said, I think networking is a very big priority when you're looking for work in esports. I think it's very important for yourself to be out there. As a brand, as you should constantly be trying to sell yourself. And if you talk about how the way you get into something, I think there's so many different ways you can get into it, but the most important thing that people need to understand is you have to start somewhere. You have to like, you can't just lie on your bed and think, oh, I'm going to be a manager tomorrow, I'm going to be a caster tomorrow. You have to start somewhere. Like, if you want to be a caster, just take a random match, start casting, upload it on YouTube, keep sharing it. You have to start somewhere. You have to start making people notice you. Like, I have seen people running Facebook groups, adminning Facebook groups, getting good jobs in esports today. They started 3-4 years ago and they're getting good jobs today. It's very important to just get out, and start doing something towards what you want to get. And that's what I did. Like, one of my videos went viral in 2012. I then wrote a guide about the champ I was playing, got a few million hits, got into esports as a player. And so I got into my role because my org, the org I played for back then, was shutting down, and he said, I have to shut down because I don't have a manager and it's difficult to manage stuff. And I said, you know what, give me a chance, I'll do it. And I said, you don't have to pay me. If you like me, give me a try. And within 3 months, I started working for Neckbreak to Entity, and the rest is history. So I think it's important to just set yourself a goal of where you want to be and just start running towards it.
Definitely, there's always going to be the first step that you need to take to get into the work of the esports industry. Like, I have this interesting story wherein I used to be an audio engineer before I started working, and I'm pretty new to the scene. I just started okay, now I'm old. I've been like, it's been 8 months since I started casting, but it was literally just me replying to one email of one post of Angela with an email like, hey, I want to be a caster, but I've never casted before. So I was called for a trial for that. And from there on out, Krat was one of my mentors. Angela has mentored me a lot. And the journey has gotten me now to where I'm casting PMPL. And when sort of people ask me, it's the same things. You need to take the first step, as Sid said. Then, as imPERium said, you need to make a brand out of self. And as Apollonia said, networking is always going to be an important thing. But there are these certain skills that we all had at some point in the life, skills that we learned somewhere. So what do you think were those skills that we picked up in our schools, in our high schools, or in life in general that would have helped you out working in esports? Apollonia, with you first.
Oh, okay. I have quite I had a very colorful background, and they weren't related to esports at all. So I've always been a gamer. I've been playing all sorts of games: RuneScape, Maple, Audition, Guns. I've always been playing games, but growing up, I did a bunch of different things. So in my early teens, I was doing sales. I was a sales girl, but that helped me, get comfortable talking to people and presenting myself. And then it went on to I was a caricature artist as well. So I would go to events, sit down, entertain people, and draw them at the same time in 5 minutes. So it was very different. And I played in a band, I was on stage, and then I did stand-up comedy. So I realized that I was very comfortable around people. Yeah. And I used all of this experience. I was just like, okay, I don't mind talking to people. I don't mind being up and about. So it started out with emceeing. There was a FIFA tournament for Football Week. So I emceed that, realized, hey, that worked. I tried out for shoutcasting, and now I primarily do a lot of the shoutcasting in the League of Legends scene here in South Asia. So I use that to my advantage. I managed to also land a spot as a host for one of the festivals. It was called Shine Festival in Singapore. So Twitch had a booth, and I was hosting for Twitch. So it's kind of like you can take your past experiences and then find out where it fits in esports. And also because I loved playing the game so much, I trained really hard before I became a host to do competitive gaming because I really wanted to play. And then I realized, okay, I'm going to take a step back, and then it went on to coaching, and then so on and so forth. So, yeah. So take your past experiences. For me, it was a lot of arts, a lot of performing and talking to people. Yeah.
imPERium, what about you?
So when it came to school, and let's say what it taught me with regards to esports, is that I'll be straight up, not that much. The only positive, let's say, correlation between esports and let's say being at school was the rare times I did play Pokemon on my Game Boy Color with kids at school. But other than that, I was never really an academic person. But in realizing I was never really an academic person, that did give me the awareness to focus on what were my strengths, with those talking to people, being outgoing. So I focused on that, right? I focused on learning to be as comfortable as I can in situations where I'm talking to one person, to people, hundreds of people. And when that came to, let's say, selling myself on casting events, and when that came to contacting people about, hey, look, my name is imPERium, I'm a caster, that helped with that layering of building that foundation of confidence that I could say to them, hey, I'm the right person for the job. Or even when it came to casting at a live event like I did in Germany or like I did in India, you're able to actually turn that feeling of what could be fear, it's very easily fear, and you turn that into motivation, you turn that into excitement, you turn that into that push to do the best job that you can in that moment. And yeah, that did come a little bit from school, but it was about recognizing my strengths when I was in school and building it up over the years.
And Sid?
Yeah, I kind of agree with imPERium when he said that. I don't think I picked up a lot of qualities in school that I've been using in daily life in my role. But a couple of things that I think are very important in my role that I also learned in school were, having a proper schedule and a timetable for everything that we do around in the boot camp. So since I'm a manager, I have to schedule what my players do, set like timetable, set goals. The most I think important let's say skill that I learned in school was when you have that grading system, first grade, second grade. I feel like the same way in esports, you have to be a better version of yourself every year. I think you have to keep on growing. This is a very competitive industry, and imPERium and Apo would also understand. Apo's in content creation, he's a caster. There's constantly competition coming your way, and you constantly have to fight it. And you can't be at the top if you're the same guy you were in 2019. You constantly have to grow yourself as a person and as a talent. So I think that's one thing I have learned from school, is that there's constantly like a dozen different people that are competing with you, and you have to stay at the top.
Okay, so the stuff that you guys said was pretty amazing, and it pretty much covered our next question as well, as to what are the traits and qualities you need to work in this industry. As you guys said, because Sid talked about time management, imPERium talked about finding your strengths and working on them, and Apollonia said some amazing stuff as well, like picking up stuff from the other things that she used to do, being comfortable around people, being in public, talking in public. And so we'll skip that one and we'll come down to the next one, which I think is going to be a pretty interesting one as well. How does the esports industry differ from other lines of work? Like, what are the pros and the cons of working in esports?
Okay, I think there's a lot of different perspectives on this, but I'll give you guys mine personally. All right. I've always seen esports as a type of new age art. Something like, how people want to do music, want to do dance, that kind of thing. When someone says, I want to be a musician, I want to be a dancer, but how do you exactly start? So it's kind of like you got to build your way up, right? You start at a low level and then you go up and go up and go up and see what it fits you. Maybe you're not going to be the next best-selling artist, but you're a music coach. Maybe you're doing production. There's other avenues. I see esports the same. The main thing that you're always going to see is the competitive gaming, but there's always something else behind. And the pros about it is that, okay, all of us, we start loving games since we are young. So it's kind of like your childhood dream into a big adult dream, you know? So that's a good part. It's also, esports is always changing. It's never the same. And it's always exciting because it's a new game that's going to come out. There's going to be new strategies. There's going to be new communities. It's always growing. So that's the pros. Like if you don't like something that's mundane, esports is like great for that. But the cons, I think Sid also mentioned imPERium as well, that is extremely competitive. It's very competitive. There's always someone waiting to steal your spot. That's one. It's something that you got to work years for. And it's not like I got a stable career in esports like the first 3 years that I was actively in it. It took many years. That's why I had to do things on the side. Like, you know, I had to earn money a different way. I had to find different means to continue my passion. But I eventually got there, and it's not easy at all. Yeah, you got to rake up the experience. So pros is that it's a very dynamic, ever-changing industry. So I find it exciting. I don't like mundane things. But the cons is that it's tough, and you got to keep fighting. You're never at your best. You're always going to be able to do more. Yeah.
Okay, so Apollina, I have a follow-up question for you as well. Like, from the perspective of a content creator, how does it look like? Like, how do you compare it to someone who does a 9 to 5 job? Because there are definitely going to be differences of pros and cons there as well.
Because apart from content creating, you know, editing, doing stuff for your audience, streams, and all of that, you got to find kind of like a side hustle kind of thing. Shoutcasting is one for me, and also managing an all-female team. That helps. And if I'm always free, and I have spare time, I would always go back to my roots. I'll do a bit of comic script editing. I'll do comic editing and stuff like that. So it's like you got to be aware of what's coming in and making sure that you're always set, you know? So as much as I have all these opportunities, I'm always making sure, like, am I pushing myself to the maximum limit? Like, you got to make sure that you're constantly growing yourself. Yeah. So it's always going to be hard. You're never going to be able to start out doing what you love straight away. You always have to do something on the side to help you as you progress and grow yourself. Then you eventually reach your goal. Yeah.
Right. Sid, what about you? What do you have to say about this?
I mean, the pros are that it's a new industry. It's very exciting. There's something new happening every day. It's growing very, very rapidly. And you know, it gives an opportunity to so many people around the world to convert what they call a hobby into a profession so easily. And speaking of cons, I think yeah, there are a lot of cons, specifically in India. There's a general lack of understanding in the people of what esports is. I mean, I still have to talk to parents of my players about, you know, how do I make this into a viable career, all of those things. Again, there's so many regulatory challenges in India as an esports professional. The esports is still not recognized in India, so we have all those visa issues and, you know, tax issues. There's a couple of problems there. As a player point of view, I think as a competitive player, a con being you have a very short shelf life. You don't get a long time to prove yourselves. It's I think 4 or 5 years max. That's where you have to shine, get all the success you can, and then move into something else. Uh, and as everyone else has said, extremely competitive. Like if you divide esports into 3 tiers, in all job roles, entering tier 3 I think is easy. Going from tier 3 to tier 2, again, not very difficult. I think the biggest challenge is when you have to go from tier 2 to tier 1. I think it's incredibly difficult to make that jump with the kind of competition we have everywhere in the world in esports. And yeah, she spoke about 9 to 5. I also thought that, you know, not working 9 to 5 is an advantage of esports. But then again, now I work round the clock, so It's a full-time gig now. I have to look after my players all day long, so there's a kind of a con there. But yeah, we're growing fast, and I think we'll overcome these cons very soon in this region.
I was just about to say that because sometimes it can feel like you're working around the clock. And imPERium being a talent, there are a lot of other things that you have to look out for as well that sort of increase the workload as well. Uh, you have to manage yourself, you have to go around, look for events. How do you think that sort of uh, works out in the favor of people working as talents in the esports industry?
Look, at the end of the day, because both Sid and Paul really touched on some great points, and with the whole new age art, that it's so true about esports. It really is that. And Sid, in terms of being able to manage yourself and manage those around you. For me, the biggest difference and between, let's say, 9 to 5 job and esports is that esports is driven by passion. Like, you can go to a 9 to 5 job, you can work that job. Yeah, you can like it, but you can go home, and you can go back to. Whereas esports is very much about the passion you have for that industry, the passion you have for what you're doing, whether it is casting, whether it is streaming, whether it is producing, whatever it is. It's all about passion because we all know that the first 2-3 years you're doing it for pretty much free. And unlike if you want to be a dancer, or if you want to be a singer, you can take singing classes, you can take dancing lessons, you can get into a dance studio, you can, and not saying that it's not like that in esports, but it's definitely a lot harder. You have to search for that. It's not as widely out there, and it's like Sid said, like, there's still that kind of buffer where there's still that gap where you have to go to let's say parents of players, or you're talking to people in the outside world, and I've had plenty of people say to me, yeah, what do you do? And I'm like, yeah, I'm an esports commentator, and they're like, what's esports? And I have to kind of say to them, well, okay, gaming, like video games. They're like, yeah. I'm like, it's like that, only a lot more serious, and it's competitively, and they still don't quite understand because it's not as out there. So that is some of the cons, is that it is kind of it is still on the back front, and it's still trying to break its way through to the mainstream. And then kind of a con to that is kind of like Sid touched upon, is that you have to put in hours upon hours upon hours. There's that level of kind of isolation that, okay, a lot of people are feeling now in the situation we're in, but when it comes to esports, it's very much about your own self-motivation to do it, and your self-motivation to really put in the work and the time. And that can get to people, 100%. It can. But when you get that breakthrough, whether it's a player, or whether it's a caster, whether it's a manager, or whatever it is, when you get that breakthrough, it's always so much more worthwhile.
It's so rewarding. The feeling is great.
It is like, and that's the thing. So the pro is the reward. 100% the pro. Like, I would take any event that I've gotten over any promotion at a job I've had easily.
Yeah.
But it does take a while to get there, and during that while there are a lot of weird conversations, as you mentioned, when you go out to people and say you work in esports as a commentator. So esports, I mean, it is for I think Sid would agree with me, esports in India is still sort of looked down upon a little bit. And Sid sort of touched on this, imPERium, you talked about this as well, the conversations with parents that you need to have when you tell them, all right, this is what I'm going to do. How does one go about having that conversation with one's parent? I think, Sid, we'll start with you, since you just mentioned that you need to talk to your players' parents sometimes.
I mean, I'll just tell you about the conversation I had with my parents. I got into gaming when I was competitive gaming when I was in the 10th grade. So I spent most of my 10th, 11th, 12th sneaking out to cyber cafes, and I got caught a couple of times. So my mother kind of knew about it, that I was heavily into gaming, but obviously she's an Indian mother. She always wanted me to become an engineer. Once my 12th results came out, we sat in front of a computer when she was looking at different colleges and engineering colleges for me, and she knew about all the events I had won before that. She knew I was good, but she wasn't ready to have the conversation about me taking it up professionally. And when she was looking at engineering colleges, I was just sitting there blank for 30 minutes. And then I go, you know what, I can't do this. I have no interest in this. I'll do it if you want me to, but I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to enjoy doing this. And she just started crying. I don't know if she was disappointed, but she started crying. She left the room for a couple of hours, came back with some Google results of game designing colleges in India, and she was like, if you want to do this. So back then the general misconception was that esports is, if you want to get into esports, do a games design course or get into video game designing. And with that Google result, she said, you know what, I'm giving you 5 years. If you don't make something out of yourself in this industry, I will get you a government job and you'll be doing that after 5 years. So I think the kind of conversation kids need to have with their parents is very similar. I think you can't just go to them and say like, oh, I want to be a competitive player, I want to be the best in the world. I think you need to have something that you can show to them, like, oh, I won these events. I'm a very good gamer. I'm in the top 1% or top 2% of the players out there, especially in South Asia, I believe. uh, that's the kind of conversation. For Jonathan example, the conversation I had with his parents was, I showed them his YouTube, the kind of growth he's having, the kind of fan following. He's India's, I think he's probably top 5 in Southeast Asia right now. And it wasn't easy to convince his parents as well. It's not going to be an easy conversation, but it's important to have it and have them included in your goals and your aspirations. uh, but but have something to back your talks, is what I'm trying to say. Just go to them empty handed. Have something to say, hey, you know what, I've done this and I want to do more. Just stand behind me.
Right, Imperium, what do you have to say about this one? Because coming in from India, I'm sure you're gonna have a different experience over there.
Believe it or not, overall, not much different. At least, my own personal experience, because I came into esports, a little bit older, right? So I'd had many years of
Yeah.
living my life and my own experiences before that. But there was still that level of trepidation, especially for my dad, who I have an absolutely fantastic relationship with. But when I told him about doing casting and about wanting to do it more full time, he was worried about me, right? He didn't quite understand what it is that I was doing, and he didn't quite understand, how big esports is. So I showed him a couple of videos of me commentating. I gave him a little bit of information on how big esports can be / is at the time. And when I told him about my first big opportunity, which was last year in April at the PMCO, and I told him about the event, when he understood that I was taking this chance for myself, he was full on behind me. He was 100% supportive of me doing what I want to do, because I think, what Sid touched upon, at least from a player point of view, and in many aspects of esports, it's about kind of, you've got to sell yourself to your parents, right? For kids, you've got to have that data in some way, shape, or form. You can't just, like Sid said, you can't just say, yeah, okay, I want to be a gamer. That kind of doesn't mean anything anymore. You've got to sell yourself to your parents like you would to an organization, to a tournament organizer, to any aspect of life. You've got to show that passion, and you've got to show that, look, I want to do this. I want to get somewhere with with what I'm doing, in the world of esports.
And Paulo, what about you? Because you switched regions. You came from Singapore all the way to India.
Yes, I did. Okay, when it comes to parents accepting, I think I had I think my case is a little bit unique because my mom's a gamer.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's kind of like my mom was a gamer and my dad was crazy. He's a comic artist. So he always liked computers and I always had a computer. My mom liked playing games. And up to now, she still plays Maple Story, still has a guild. She's still into it, right? So I watched my mom playing a game and I thought, okay, so this is fine. My dad, because, he's a comic artist, he's a bit wacky, he was more open-minded to it. But they gave me, I wasn't very good in school as well, right? I didn't want to do product design and I had to drop out of college. But my parents gave me kind of like an ultimatum. They said that if you want to do esports, at least try doing other things and show that you have some form of commitment. So my dad, I wouldn't say forced, but he encouraged me very hard to pick up an instrument just because he wants to see a little bit of discipline. So he made me play the drums and he also taught me how to draw. And he was like, if you can focus and do something, then I believe that whatever your passion is, you can go and chase it. So he made me take that up and do it on the side. And my parents over time just kind of became convinced that like, okay, she has got a mass communications diploma and she managed to pick up an instrument, learn how to draw, at least the basics of it and everything. I'm pretty sure that if she goes into esports, she'll find a way to do it. So they kind of believed in me through looking through different things that I did. And it also helped that they were more open-minded about it. So that's how I managed to get into esports, yeah. But I still had to prove something. Like, I could do something, They didn't want me to just sit at home the whole day just playing games and just thinking everything esports. They wanted show some balance. Do this and do that at the same time. Just achieve these little goals that we're going to put in, set in place for you. So I did it. Yeah, and it's kind of like, I prove it to them, but in a different way, like a weird, it's kind of strange, but yeah.
I mean, yeah. So from there, all of us have probably, I guess I can say this, all of us have made it in the esports industry that we are working in, and my story was sort of different because I instead of dropping out of college or anything, I just dropped my entire previous career. I was supposed to go into I had a job in a studio lined up in another city. I was supposed to move 2 weeks before I started this job, and that sort of was my dad felt pretty weird, but when my father sort of came to PMCO fall split and he saw what esports actually was in India and how big it was getting, that's when he sort of started looking into it and he was like, all right, it seems like this actually might work out for you. And that was sort of something weird that I did. Wouldn't advise it to anyone, but as you guys said, you need to be passionate. You need to show some results that yes, you can do it. And as Sid said, if you want to be a pro player, you need to make sure that before you approach your parents, you have put in the grind to at least win some events and made some growth there as well. But that sort of almost brings us to the end of it. And with that, I will have one final question for you guys. What is going to be your advice to someone who's just starting their journey? And Apollonia, I'll start with you once again.
Advice on how to start your journey?
Yeah.
Okay. We said this so many times through this podcast, but it actually is passion. Passion is the only thing that will give you the motivation and the strength to put in all of that hard work. Because if you don't have a passion, I believe that if you don't have a passion for something, you won't do it. Nobody wants to do something you don't want to do. So you got to do a lot of research, make sure you know what your goals are, write it down, make a mood board out of it. I don't know, I do that, those kind of stuff. And you just have to keep following and remind yourself every day what your goal is. And don't you have to make sacrifices, but if I could speak to the young me back then, like, don't throw everything away in search of something. Always maintain a balance. Whenever you chase your goals, make sure that there's always a balance. Never ever throw yourself out of whack. Take care of yourself and just be very passionate and be realistic as well. If something's not working out, be willing to make changes as well. Yeah. So you got to be really realistic, passionate, keep fighting for it, and don't succumb to any bad thoughts that you have about yourself. Confidence is key. Very key. You need a thick skin, a very, very thick skin as well. Yeah.
Sid, what about you? What would you say to someone or a young Sid who is going to be looking to getting into esports, be it as a pro player or getting into the management thing?
Right. So I'm just going to give you guys, the young guys who want to get into this industry, three major points in which, in my opinion, you have to follow. The first one would be you have to learn how to utilize time properly. From a player point of view, for example, you could be practicing 10 hours a day, not learning a thing, and you're not going to get anywhere with that. I think if you set like 4 hours for, say, practicing this gun, 2 hours for, say, strategizing about this map, I think that scheduling and utilizing your time very properly is extremely important, because there's so many people around the world doing the same thing. You have to do it properly in a very systematic way. The second thing I would say is get used to working under pressure. I think in most of the roles that we see in esports, uh, it's extremely competitive, and with competition there will be a lot of pressure. So you have to sort of be in a very comfy place in your mind, where you are strong enough to handle all that pressure. I don't think anyone in this podcast hasn't felt pressure. You as a caster or a host, even imPERium, even Apo, in with her content, there will always be some sort of pressure on you. The third one and the most important one is that you have to set goals. Uh, and work towards them. If let's say your goal is 100 pointer, you need to realize that you can reach that 100 pointer 10 points at a time, and you don't need to make that jump. You can work slow, but set goals and keep running towards it until you achieve it. When you achieve that properly, you move on to the next goal and keep running towards that. But do it very systematically is the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Right. And imPERium, what about you?
Man, beginning in the world of esports. Like, firstly, even as a caster, I still feel that I'm still beginning in the world of esports. I know you said we've made it, but I still think I'm just beginning in the world of esports. But if I was to give any bit of advice, and this can be touched upon for anything, it doesn't have to be esports, but I think it hits a lot of key areas, is that be happy. Do what makes you happy. So if you want to be a player and you're happy being a player and you're happy being wanting to be a competitive player, then go for that. But if you're not happy in where you are as a competitive player, it's okay for you to step back. It's the same thing as a caster. It's okay for you to, take a small break or take a step back and go, no, I don't want to, let's say, cast this event, or I don't feel ready to cast this event because I'm not happy doing it at the moment. It can be in any area. If it's graphic design, which is a big part, if you're not happy working on a piece for somebody, and if you don't feel happy creating that piece of art or that piece of graphics, don't do it. I would always say choose to do what makes you happy, 110%, especially in a world of esports where people do generally start off younger than other areas and other industries. There's so much time for people to make a name for themselves, for you as a viewer watching it, to make a name for yourself. So it's important that you do what makes you happy. I know that's always been my end goal when it comes to esports, is that I've always made sure that I'm doing something that makes me happy. If I'm not, then I'm not going to do it.
That was actually really good advice, and I think knowing unknowingly I have done all of those things because I'm happy at what I do. I was passionate about games, and time management is something I'm still bad at. So I think I'll get in touch with Sid to help me out with that later on. But that sort of brings us to the end of this episode of NODventures. Thank you so much to all three of you for being here and basically letting us know how a career in esports work, what all you need to do, how the conversations goes with people, with parents, and just sharing your experience. So for you guys watching, be sure to subscribe to the NODWIN Gaming's YouTube channel to catch the next episode that is going to come out next week, and like this one as well. Also, don't forget to comment below what other episodes or what are the topics you want to hear about and which guests do you want to see. Until then, my name is Varun superjonny John. We had Paulo, imPERium, and Sid Joshi this time, and we'll all see you some other time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.